Good morning and welcome to the John DeVito Show. We're going to be doing something a little bit different today, and I hope you enjoy this. This idea came to me while I was watching the last season of American Horror Story. And I'm not sure if all of you watch it, but the last season was broken up into two mini seasons. The first portion of the season was based in Provincetown, Massachusetts. And the second part of the season were a four episode mini season based on aliens in the United States and the history of aliens. And there were theories thrown out there such as Marilyn Monroe being assassinated because of her knowledge of aliens, JFK being assassinated again because of his knowledge of aliens, Nixon being forced to resign because of what he knew, and Dwight Eisenhower, the president, being heavily involved with meetings with aliens over the years. So I did some research into all of these topics and found out that there was quite a bit to read about all of these different items. And many people believe that these things have actually happened in this country. So as I did my research, I looked into a variety of different things. And as I continued to research, I learned about a group called the Majestic 12 or Majestic 12. So I'm going to do a two-part series, and hopefully you tune into both because I think they're both going to be very interesting. And I'm breaking it up into two parts so it's not too long. But I want to get into very quickly talking about the Majestic 12. The Majestic 12 is a group that has been mentioned in many circles of being a group that was created in 1947 in the United States. And a lot of people believe that this group exists today under a different name. But I'm going to get into talking about the Majestic 12, and this is going to help me to build to the next show where I talk about Dwight Eisenhower and his association with aliens, how he actually signed treaties with a group of aliens. And that treaty allowed us to gain technology from the aliens who wanted to perform experiments on the U.S. population. So with everything going on in this world right now, and when you see what's happening in the United States and across the globe, I know this is kind of out there, but again, could these things be true? I mean, there was talk about, these aliens also faked the moon landing at Area 51, and they had a set at Area 51. It was really a very interesting season that got me thinking. And then when I got on and started researching about this, because I assumed it was fiction, there's a lot of like reports and books and things like that have been written on these topics. So I'm going to get into this a little bit, and I think these shows will be interesting. So if you like the paranormal, if you like maybe even true crime, and if you're into, learning about aliens and conspiracy theories, this might be something for you to look into. So without further ado, let's get into this first show. And this is going to be about the Majestic 12 and the secret government, because we do hear about that quite a bit in society today. So let's get into it. So we're going to start with the years before Majestic 12 were formed. Okay. So during the years following World War II, the government of the United States was confronted with a series of events that were to change beyond prediction its future and with the future of humanity. These events were so incredible that they defied belief. A stunned President Truman and his top military commanders found themselves virtually impotent after having just won the most devastating and costly war in history. The United States had developed, used, and was the only nation on Earth in possession of the atomic bomb, which alone had the potential to destroy any enemy, and even the Earth itself. At that time, the United States had the best economy, the most advanced technology, the highest standard of living, exerted the most influence, and fielded the largest and most powerful military forces in history. We can only imagine the confusion and concern when the informed elite of the United States government discovered that an alien spacecraft piloted by insect-like beings from a totally incomprehensible culture had crashed in the desert of New Mexico. Between 1947 and December of 1952, at least 16 crashed or downed alien craft, 65 alien bodies, and one live alien were recovered. An additional alien craft had exploded and nothing was recovered from the incident. Of these incidents, 13 occurred within the borders of the United States, not including the craft which disintegrated in the air. Of these 13, one was in Arizona, 11 were in New Mexico, and one was in Nevada. Three occurred in foreign countries. Of one was in Norway. The last two were in Mexico. Sightings of UFOs were so numerous that serious investigation and debunking of each report became impossible utilizing these existing intelligence assets that we had at that time. So then they go on to talk about the alien Earth presence. An alien craft was found on February 13th, 1948, on a mesa near Aztec, New Mexico. Another craft was located on March 25th, 1948, in Hart Canyon near Aztec, New Mexico. It was 100 feet in diameter. A total of 17 alien bodies were recovered from these two crafts. Of even greater significance was the discovery of a large number of human body parts stored within both of these vehicles. A demon had reared its ugly head, and paranoia quickly took hold of everyone then in the know. The secret lid immediately became an above the top secret lid. It was screwed down tight. The security blanket was even tighter than that imposed under the Manhattan Project. In the coming years, these events were to become the most closely guarded secrets in the history of the world. A special group of America's top scientists were organized, and a program under the name Project Sign was created in December of 1947 to discover the phenomenon. The whole nasty business was contained within a shroud of secrecy. Project Sign evolved into Project Grudge in December of 1948. A low level connection and disinformation project named Blue Book was formed under The Grudge. 16 volumes were to come out of Grudge, including the controversial Grudge 13, which I and Bill English saw, read, and revealed to the public. Blue teams were put together to recover the crashed discs and dead or alive aliens. The blue teams were later to evolve into alpha teams under Project Pounce. During these early years, the United States Air Force and the CIA exercised complete control over the alien secret. In fact, the CIA was formed by presidential executive order, first as the Central Intelligence Group for the express purpose of dealing with alien presence. Later, the National Security Act, the NSA, was established to oversee the intelligence community and especially the alien endeavor. A series of national security memos and executive orders removed the CIA from the sole task of gathering foreign intelligence and slowly but thoroughly legalized direct action in the form of covert activities at home and abroad. So then there was an intelligence gathering. On December 9th, 1947, Truman approved issuance of NSC-4, entitled The Coordination of Foreign Intelligence Information Measures, at the urging of Secretary Marshall, Forrestal, Patterson, and the Director of State Department's Policy Meeting Staff, Keenan. The Foreign and Military Intelligence Book 1, final report of the Select Committee to study governmental operations with respect to intelligent activities, United States Senate 94th Congress, second session, report number 94/755, on August 26, 1979, page 49, states the following. The directive empowering the Secretary of State to coordinate overseas information activities designed to counter communism, a top secret annex to NSC-4, NSC-4A, instructed the Director of the Central Intelligence to undertake covert psychological activities in pursuit of the aims set forth in NSC-4. The initial authority given to the CIA for covert operations under NSC-4A did not establish formal procedures for either coordinating or approving these operations. It simply directed the DCI to undertake covert actions and ensure, through liaison with the state of defense, the resulting operations which were consistent with an American policy. Later, NSC 10 1 and NSC 10 2 were to supersede NSC 4 and NSC 4A and expand the covert abilities even further. The Office of Policy Coordination, OPC, was chartered to carry out an expanded program of covert activities. NSC 10/1 and NSC 10/2 validated illegal and extra large practices or extra legal practices and procedures as being agreeable to the national security leadership. The reaction was swift. In the eyes of the intelligence community, no holes were barred. Under NSC 10/1, an executive coordination group was established to review but not approve covert project proposals. The CG was secretly tasked to coordinate the alien projects. NSC 10/1 and NSC 10/2 were interpreted to mean that no one at the top wanted to know about anything until it was over and successful. These actions established a buffer between the president and the information. It was intended that this buffer serve as a means for the president to deny knowledge if leaks divulged the true state of affairs. This buffer was used in later years for the purpose of effectively isolating succeeding presidents from the knowledge of the alien presence other than what the secret government and the intelligence community wanted them to know. NSC 10 2 established a study panel which was met secretly and met up with scientific minds of the day. The study panel was not called MJ12. Another NSC memo, NSC 10/5, further outlined the duties of the study panel. These NSC memos and secret executive orders set the stage for the creation of MJ12, which is the Majestic 12, only 4 years later. So that was kind of confusing, but if you really sit back and think about it, that's basically saying that the government created these memos in order to provide a separation between this secret branch of the government and the president. So the president could actually deny knowledge of aliens or alien life forms if he was asked, because there was a separation and that information was not being shared with them. So that's very important to understand what that meant. All right, so then there was a first victim and a cover-up. Secretary of Defense James Forrestal began to object to the secrecy. He was a very idealistic and religious man who believed that the public should be told. When he began to talk to leaders of the opposition party and leaders of Congress about the alien problem, he was asked to resign immediately by Truman. He expressed his fears to many people and rightfully believed that he was being watched. This was interpreted by those who were ignorant of the facts as paranoia. Forrestal later was said to have suffered a mental breakdown and was admitted to Bethesda Naval Hospital. In fact, it was feared that Forrestal would begin to talk and he had to be isolated and discredited. Sometime in the early morning of May 22nd, 1949, agents of the CIA tied a sheet around the neck, fastened the other end to a fixture in his room, and threw James Forrestal out the window. The sheet tore and he plummeted to his death. He became one of the first victims of cover-ups. Okay, then we have the EBE, the live alien that had been taken, or the live alien, that had been taken from the 1947 Roswell crash was named EBE. The name had been suggested by Dr. Vannevar Bush, who was short for extraterrestrial biological entity. EBE had a tendency to lie for over a year and would give only the desired answers to the questions asked. Those questions which would have resulted in an undesirable answer went unanswered. At some point during the second year of captivity, he began to open up about the information derived from the EBE was startling, to say the least. The compilation of his revelations became the foundation of what would later be called, quote unquote, Yellow Book. Photographs were taken of EBE, which, among others, I and Bill English were to view years later in Grudge 13. In late 1951, EBE became ill. Medical personnel had been unable to determine the cause of EBE's illness and had no background from which to draw. EBE's system was chlorophyll based, and he was processed food into energy much the same way as plants. waste materials were excreted the same as plants. It was decided that an expert on botany was called for. A botanist, Dr. Guillermo Mendoza, was brought in to try to help him recover. Dr. Mendoza worked to save EBE until mid 1952, when EBE died. Dr. Mendoza became an expert in alien biology. In a futile attempt to save EBE and to gain favor with this technologically superior alien race, the United States began broadcasting a call for help in early 1952 into the vast regions of space. The call went unanswered, but the project continued as an effort of good faith. Then there was a creation of the NSA. President Truman created a super secret national agency by secret executive order on November 4th, 1952. Its primary purpose was to decipher the alien communications and language and establish a dialogue with the aliens. The most urgent task was a continuation of the earlier effort and was codenamed Sigma, SIGMA. A second purpose of the NSA was to monitor all communications and admissions from any and all devices worldwide for the purpose of gathering intelligence, both human and alien, and to contain a secret of alien presence. Project Sigma was successful. The NSA also maintains communications with the Luna base and other secret space programs. By executive order, the NSA is exempt from all laws and do not specifically name the NSA in the text of the law as being the subject to that law. That means that if the agency is not spelled out in any text of any and every law passed by Congress, it is not subject to that or those laws. The NSA now performs many other duties and, in fact, is the premier agency within the intelligence community. Today's NSA receives 75% of the monies allotted to the intelligence community. The old saying, where the money goes, therein the power resides, is true. The DCI today is a figurehead maintained as a public ruse. The primary task of the NSA is still alien communications, but now includes other alien projects as well. President Truman had been keeping our aliens, including the Soviet Union, informed of the developing alien problem since the Roswell recovery. This has been done in case the aliens turned out to be a great threat to the human race. Plans were formulated to defend the Earth in case of invasion. Great difficulty was encountered in maintaining international secrecy. It was decided that an outside group was necessary to coordinate and control international efforts in order to hide the secret and the normal scrutiny of the governments by the press. The result was the formation of a secret society known as Bilderbergers. The headquarters of this group is in Geneva, Switzerland. The Bilderbergers evolved into a secret world government and that now controls everything. The United Nations was then and is now an international joke. All right, then we had a new president. In 1953, a new man occupied the White House. He was a man used to a structured staff organization and a chain of command. His method was to delegate authority and rule by committees. He made major decisions, but only when his advisors were unable to come to a consensus. His normal method was to read through or listen to several alternatives, then approve one. Those who worked closely with him have stated that his favorite comment was, just do whatever it takes. He spent a lot of time on the golf course. This was not at all unusual for a man who had been a career Army with the ultimate position of Supreme Allied Commander during the war, a post which carried 5 stars along with it. The president was General of the Army Dwight David Eisenhower. During his first year in office, 1953, at least 10 more alien crash discs were recovered, along with 26 dead and 4 live aliens. Of the 10, 4 were found in Arizona, 2 in Texas, 1 in New Mexico, 1 in Louisiana, 1 in Montana, and 1 in South Africa. There were hundreds of sightings. Eisenhower knew that he had to wrestle and beat the alien problem. He knew that he could not do it by revealing the secret to the Congress. Early in 1953, the new president turned to his friend and fellow member of the Council of Foreign Relations, Nelson Rockefeller, for help with the alien problem. Eisenhower and Rockefeller began planning the secret structure of alien task supervision, which was to become a reality within 1 year. The idea of MJ-12, which is Majestic 12, is thus born. It was Nelson's uncle Winthrop Aldrich who had been crucial in convincing Eisenhower to run for president. The whole Rockefeller family, and with them, the Rockefeller empire, had solidly backed Ike. Asking Rockefeller for help with the alien problem was to be the biggest mistake Eisenhower ever made with the future of the United States and probably in all of humanity. So that's a pretty big statement. Within 1 week of Eisenhower's election, he had appointed Nelson Rockefeller chairman of a presidential advisory committee on government organization. Rockefeller was responsible for planning the reorganization of the government. New Deal programs went into one single cabinet position called the Department of Health, Education, and Welfare. When the Congress approved the new cabinet position in April of 1953, Nelson was named to the post of Undersecretary of the Oveta Culp Hobby. Okay, so heading for Earth. In 1953, astronomers discovered large objects in space that were moving towards Earth. It was first believed that they were asteroids. Later evidence proved that the object could only be spaceships. Project Sigma intercepted alien radio communication. When the objects reached the Earth, they took a very high orbit around the equator. There were several huge ships, and their actual intent was unknown. Project Sigma, a new project, and new project Plato, through a radio communication using the computer binary language, were able to arrange a landing that resulted in a face-to-face contact with alien beings from another planet. Project Plato was asked with establishing diplomatic relations with this alien race of space aliens. In the meantime, a race of human looking aliens contacted the US government. The alien group warned us against the aliens that were orbiting the equator and offered to help us with our spiritual development. They demanded that we dismantle and destroy our nuclear weapons as a major condition. They refused to exchange technology, citing that we were spiritually unable to handle the technology which we possessed. They believed that we would use any new technology to destroy each other. This race stated that we were on a path of self-destruction and we must stop killing each other, stop polluting the earth, stop raping the earth's natural resources, and learn to live in harmony. These terms were met with extreme suspicion, especially the major condition of nuclear disarmament. It was believed that meeting the condition would leave us helpless in the face of an obvious alien threat. We had nothing in history to help us with the decision. Nuclear disarmament was not considered to be within the best interest of the United States. The overtures were rejected. Later in 1954, a race of large-nosed gray aliens, which had been orbiting the Earth, landed at Holloman Air Force Base. A basic agreement was reached. The race identified themselves as originating from a planet around a red star in the constellation of Orion, which we call Betelgeuse. They stated that their planet was dying and that at some unknown future time they wouldn't be able to survive there. This led to a second landing at Edwards Air Force Base. The historical event had been planned in advance, and details of the treaty had been agreed upon. Eisenhower arranged to be in Palm Springs on vacation. On the approved day, the president was spirited away to the base, and the excuse was given that he had to visit the dentist because he had chipped a tooth. All right, so then at this meeting, a formal treaty was actually signed. President Eisenhower met with the aliens, and a formal treaty between the alien nation and the United States of America was signed. We then received our first alien ambassador from outer space. His name and title was His Omnipotent Highness Krill, pronounced Krill. In the American tradition of disdain for royal titles, he was secretly called Original Hostage Krill. You should know that the alien flag is known as the trilateral insignia. It is displayed on their craft and worn on their uniforms. Both of these landings and the second meeting were filmed. The film still exists today. The treaty stated the aliens would not interfere in our affairs and we would not interfere in theirs. We would keep their presence on Earth a secret. They would furnish us with advanced technology and would help us in our technological development. They would not make any treaty with any other Earth nation. They could abduct humans on a limited and periodic basis for the purpose of medical examination and monitoring of our development, with the stipulation that all humans would not be harmed, would be returned to their point of abduction, that the humans would have no memory of the event, and that the alien nation would furnish MJ-12 a list of all human contacts and abductees on a regularly scheduled basis. It was agreed that each nation would receive the ambassador of the other for as long as the treaty remained in force. It was further agreed that the alien nation and the United States would exchange 16 personnel each to the other with the purpose of learning each of the other. They were underground bases. The alien guests would remain on Earth, and the human guests would travel to the alien point of origin for a specified period of time, then return, at which point a reverse exchange would be made. It was also agreed that bases would be constructed underground for the use of the alien nation, and that two bases would be constructed for the joint use of alien nation and the United States government. Exchange of technology would take place in the jointly occupied bases. These alien bases would be constructed under Indian reservations and in the four corners of the Utah, New Mexico, Arizona, and Colorado areas. And one would be constructed in Nevada as in the area known as S-4, located 7 miles south of the western border of Area 51. All alien bases are under complete control of the Department of Naval Intelligence, and the personnel who work in these complexes received their checks from the Navy. Construction of the base began immediately, but progress was slow until large amounts of money were made available in 1957. Work continued on the quote unquote Yellow Book. Area 51 and the S4. Project Red Light was formed, and experimentation in test flying alien craft had begun in earnest. A top secret facility was built at Groom Lake in Nevada, in the midst of the weapons test range. It was codenamed Dreamland. The installation was placed under the Department of Navy and cleared of all personal required Q clearance as well as the executive presidential approval. This is ironic due to the fact that the President of the United States does not have clearance to visit this site. Imagine that the president does not have clearance. The alien base, in exchange of technology, actually took place in an area known as S4. Area S4 was codenamed the Dark Side of the Moon. The Army was tasked to form a secret super organization to furnish security for all alien tasked projects. The organization became the National Reconnaissance Organization based at Fort Carson, Colorado. The specific teams trained to secure the projects were called Delta. A second project, codenamed Snowbird, was created to explain away any sightings of the red light crafts as being Air Force experiments. The Snowbird crafts were manufactured using a conventional technology and were flown for the press on several occasions. Project Snowbird was also used to debunk legitimate public sightings of alien crafts, UFOs. Project Snowbird was very successful, and reports of the public declined steadily until recent years. Secret funding. A multi-million dollar secret fund was organized and kept by the military office of the White House. The fund was used to build over 75 deep underground facilities. Presidents who asked were told that the fund was used to build deep underground shelters for the president in case of a war. Only a few were built for the president. Millions of dollars were funneled through this office to MJ-12 and then out to contractors, and was used to build top secret alien bases as well as top secret deep underground military bases that they called DUMB, D-U-M-B, and facilities created by Alternative 2 throughout the nation. President Johnson was used to fund was used to fund a build to build movie theaters to pave the road on his ranch. He had no idea of the purpose. The secret White House Underground Construction Fund was set up in 1957 by President Eisenhower. The funding was obtained from Congress under the guise of construction and maintenance of secret sites where the president could be taken in case of military attack. Presidential emergency sites. These sites are literally holes in the ground deep enough to withstand a nuclear blast and are outfitted with state-of-the-art communications equipment. To date, there are more than 75 sites spread across the country which were built using money from this fund. The Atomic Energy Commission had built at least 22 underground sites. The location and everything to do with these sites were also considered and treated as top secret. The money was and is under the control of the military office of the White House and was and is laundered throughout a web that even most knowledgeable spy or accountants cannot follow. As of 1980, a few at the beginning and end of this web know what the money was used for. At the beginning were Representatives George Mahon of Texas and chairman of the House Appropriations Committee and its Defense Subcommittee, and State Representative Robert Sykes of Florida, chairman of the House Appropriation Military Construction Subcommittee. Today, it is rumored that House Speaker Jim Wright controls the money in Congress and that a power struggle is underway to remove him. At the end of the line was President MJ-12, the Director of Military Office and Commander of the Washington Navy Yard. The money was authorized by the Appropriations Committee and was all allocated by the Department of Defense as a top secret item in the Army construction program. The Army, however, could not spend it. In fact, did not even know what it was for. Authorization to spend the money was in reality given to the Navy. The money was channeled to the Chesapeake Division of the Navy Engineers, who did not know what it was for either. Not even the commanding officer, who was admiral, knew that what the funds would be used for. Only one man, Navy commander, who was assigned to the Chesapeake Division, but in reality was responsible only to the military office of the White House, knew of the actual purpose, amount, the ultimate destination of the top secret fund. The total secrecy surrounding the fund meant that almost every trace of it could be made to disappear by the very few people who controlled it. There have never been, and most likely never will be, an audit of this money, of the secret money. Large amounts of money were transferred from the top secret fund to a location in Palm Beach, Florida, that belongs to the Coast Guard called Peanut Island. The island is adjacent to property that was owned by Joseph Kennedy. The money was said to have been used for landscaping and general beautification. Some time ago, a TV news special on the Kennedy assassination told of a Coast Guard officer transferring money into a briefcase to a Kennedy employee across this property line. Could this have been a secret payment to the Kennedy family for the loss of their son, John F. Kennedy? The payments continued through the year 1967 and then stopped. The total amount transferred is unknown, and the actual use of the money is also unknown. Meanwhile, Nelson Rockefeller changed positions again. This time, he was to take C.D. Jackson's old position, which had been called the Special Assistant for the Psychological Strategy. Within Nelson's appointment, the name was changed to the Special Assistant for Cold War Strategy. The position would evolve over the years into the same position Henry Kissinger was ultimately to hold under President Nixon. Officially, he was to give advice and assistance in development of increased understanding and cooperation amongst all people. The official description was a smokescreen for the Council on Foreign Economic Policy and the National Security Council, which was the highest policy-making government in the world. Nelson Rockefeller was also given a second important job as the head of a secret unit called the Planning Coordination Group, which was funded under NSC 5412/1 in March of 1955. The group consisted of different ad hoc members depending on the subject of the agenda. The basic members were Rockefeller, a representative of the Department of State, and the Director of Central Intelligence. It was soon called the 3412 Committee or the Special Group NSC 5412/1 established the rule that covert operations were subject to approval of the executive committee, whereas in the past three operations were initially solely on the authority of the director of the Central Intelligence. So here we go with the founding of the Majestic 12, the MJ-12. By secret executive memorandum, NSC 5410, Eisenhower had preceded NSC 5412-1 in 1954 to establish a permanent committee, not ad hoc, to be known as Majority 12, MJ-12, to oversee and conduct all covert activities concerned with alien questions. NSC 5412-1 was created to explain the purpose of these meetings when Congress and the press became curious. Majority 12 was made up of Nelson Rockefeller, the director of the CIA, Alan Welsh Dulles, the Secretary of State, John Foster Dulles, and Secretary of Defense, Charles E. Wilson. The chairman of the Joint Staff and Staff Admiral Arthur W. Radford, the director of FBI, J. Edgar Hoover, and 6 men from the executive committee of the Council of Foreign Relations known as the Wise Men. These men were all members of a secret society of scholars that called themselves the Jason Society or the Jason Scholars, who recruited their members from the Skull and Bones from Yale and the Scroll and Key societies of Harvard. So they were recruiting the elite and the intelligent to join their group. The Wise Men were key members of the Council of Foreign Relations. These were 12 members, including the first 6 from the government positions, thus Majority 12. This group was made up over the years of top officers and directors of the Council of Foreign Relations and later the Trilateral Commission. Gordon Dean, George Bush, Zbigniew Brzezinski were among them. The most important and influential of the Wise Men who served in the MJ-12 was Joan McCloy, Robert Lovett, Averell Harriman, Charles Bolin, George Keenan, and Dean Acheson. It is significant that President Eisenhower as well was one of the first 6 MJ-12 members from the government and also members of the Council on Foreign Relations. Though thorough researchers will soon discover that it will not all of the Wise Men attended Harvard or Yale, and not all of them were chosen from Skull and Bones and Scroll and Key. Membership during their college years. You will be able to quickly clear up this mystery by obtaining the book The Wise Men by Walter Isaacson and Evan Thomas, Simon & Schuster, New York. Under illustration number 9, in the center of the book, you will find a caption, Lovett and the Yale unit, and above the far right on the beach of his initiation into the Skull and Bones came at an air base near Dunkirk. I have found that members were chosen on an ongoing basis by invitation based upon merit post-college and not confined only to Harvard or Yale. A chosen few later initiated the Jason Society. They were all members on the Council of Foreign Relations, and at this time, they were known as the Eastern Establishment. This should give you a clue to the far-reaching and serious nature of these most secret college societies. The Jason Society is alive and well today and now includes members of the Trilateral Commission as well. The Trilateralists existed several years before 1973. The name of the Trilateral Commission was taken away from the alien flag known as the Trilateral Insignia. Majority 12 was to survive right up to the present day. Under Eisenhower and Kennedy, it became erroneously called the 8412 Committee, or more correctly, the Special Group. In the Johnson administration, it became the 303 Committee because the name 5412 had been compromised in the book The Secret Government. Actually, NSC 5412/1 was leaked to the author to hide the existence of NSC 5412. Under Ford, Nixon, and Carter, it was called the 40 Committee, and under Reagan, it became the PI 40 Committee. Over all of those years, only the name changed. The existence of the group and what the group stood for and did remained the same. Deceptions and mutilations. In 1955, it became obvious that aliens had deceived Eisenhower and broken the treaty. Mutilated humans were being found, along with mutilated animals, all across the United States. It was suspected that the aliens were not submitting a complete list of human contacts and abductees to MJ-12, and it was suspected that not all abductees had been returned. The Soviet Union was suspected of interacting with them, and this proved to be true. It was learned that the aliens had been and were manipulating masses of people through secret societies, witchcraft, magic, and the occult and religion. After several Air Force combat engagements with alien craft, it became apparent that our weapons were no match against theirs. In November 1955, NSC 5412-2 was issued, establishing a study committee to explore all factors which are involved in making and implementing of foreign policy in the nuclear age. This was only a blanket of snow that would create a real subject of study, the alien question. Okay, now here's a list of the study group, and I'm going to read this really quickly, and we're going to go through some of these names. Some of them you will recognize. So, by secret executive memorandum, NSC 5411 in 1954, President Eisenhower had commissioned a study group to examine all of the facts, evidence, lies, and deceptions and discover the truth of the alien question. NSC 5412-2 was only a cover that became necessary when the press began inquiring as to the purpose of regular meetings at such important men. The first meeting began at Quantico Marine Base. The study group was made up of 35 members of the Council of Foreign Relations, secret scholars known as the Jason Society or the Jason Scholars as well. Dr. Edward Teller was invited to participate, and Dr. Henry Kissinger was chosen as the group's study director for the second 18 months. Nelson Rockefeller was also a frequent visitor during his study. So here are the study group members. The chairman was Gordon Dean. One of the second phase study directors was Dr. Henry Kissinger. The first phase study director, I'm going to botch this name, but it was Dr. Brzezinski. Then there was Dr. Edwin Teller, Hanson Baldwin, Frank C. Nash, Charles P. Noyes, James A. Perkins, David Rockefeller, Lieutenant General James M. Gavin, James T. Hill Jr., Mervyn J. Kelly, Hamilton Fish Armstrong, Robert R. Bowie, William A. M. Burden, Thomas K. Finletter, I. Raby, N. E. Hollaby, Henry DeWolf Smith, Carol L. Wilson, Major General Richard Lindsay, Lloyd Berkner, Paul H. Nitze, Frank Pace Jr., Don K. Price, Oscar M. Rubenhausen, Carol P. Haskins, Joseph E. Johnson, Frank Ashtel, Major General James McCormick Jr., McGeorge Bundy, John C. Campbell, George S. Franklin Jr., Roswell L. Gilpatrio, General Walter Bedell Smith, Shields Warren, and Arnold Wolfers. The second phase meetings were also held at the Marine base of Quantico, Virginia, and the group became known as Quantico II. Nelson Rockefeller built a retreat somewhere in Maryland, which could only be reached by air for MJ-12 and the study committee so that he could meet away from public scrutiny. The secret meeting place is known by the code name The Country Club. Complete living, eating, recreation, library, and meeting facilities exist at this location. The study group was publicly closed in the later months of 1958, and Henry Kissinger published what was officially termed the results of 1957 as Nuclear Weapons and Foreign Policy by Henry A. Kissinger, published for the Council on Foreign Relations by Harper and Brothers, New York. In truth, the manuscript had already been 80% written while Kissinger was at Harvard. The study group approached, veiled in secrecy, a clue to the seriousness Kissinger attached to the study can be found in statements to his wife and his friends. Many of them stated that Henry would leave home early every morning and return late each night without speaking to anyone or responding to anyone. It seemed as if he was in another world which held no room for anyone else. These statements are very revealing. The revelations of the alien presence and actions during the study must have been a great shock. Henry Kissinger was definitely out of character during the time surrounding these meetings. He would never again be affected in this manner, no matter how no matter the seriousness of the subsequent event. On many occasions, he would work very late into the night, and having already put in a full day, the behavior eventually led to his divorce. A major finding of the alien study was that the public could not be told, as it was believed this would most certainly lead to economic collapse, collapse of the religious structure, a national panic that would lead to anarchy, secrecy that continued. An offshoot of this finding was that the public could not be told, that the Congress could not be told. Thus, funding for the projects and research would have to come from outside the government. In the meantime, money was to be obtained from the military budget and the CIA confidential non-appropriated funds. All right. Then we're going to go into the genetic experimentation. Another major finding was the aliens were using humans and animals for a source of glandular secretions, enzymes, hormonal secretions, blood, and horrible genetic experiments. The aliens explained these actions as necessary to their survival. They stated that the genetic structure had deteriorated and they were no longer able to reproduce. They stated that if they were unable to improve their genetic structure, their race would soon be extinct. We looked upon their explanations with extreme suspicion. Since our weapons were literally useless against the aliens, MJ-12 decided to continue friendly diplomatic relations with them until such time we were able to develop a technology that would enable us to challenge them on a military basis. Overtures would have been made to the Soviet Union and other nations to join forces for the survival of humanity. In the meantime, plans were developed to research and construct two weapons systems using conventional and nuclear technologies that would hopefully bring us to parity. The results of these research projects were called Joshua and Excalibur. Joshua was a weapon captured from the Germans, which at the time was capable of shattering 4-inch thick armor plate at a range of 2 miles using low frequency sound waves, and it was believed that this weapon would be effective against the alien craft and beam weapons. Excalibur had a weapon carried by missile not to exceed 30,000 feet AGL, not to deviate from the designated target for more than 50 meters, would penetrate 1,000 meters of tougher, hard-packed soil, such as found in New Mexico, and would carry a 1 megaton warhead, which was intended for use in destroying the aliens in their underground bases. Joshua was developed successfully, but never used to my knowledge. Excalibur was pushed until recent years, and there is an unprecedented effort to develop this weapon. The events at Fatima in the early part of the century were scrutinized. On suspicion that it was alien manipulation, an intelligent operation was put into motion to penetrate the secrecy involving this event. The United States utilized its Vatican moles and had been recruited in nurturing World War II, and soon obtained an entire Vatican study which included the prophecy. This prophecy stated that if man did not turn from evil and place himself at the feet of Christ, the planet would self-destruct, and the events described in the book of Revelations would indeed come to pass. It stated that a child would be born who would unite the world with a plan for world peace and a false religion beginning in 1992. In 1995, the people would discern he was evil and indeed the Antichrist. World War III would begin in the Middle East in 1995 with an invasion of Israel by a united Arab nation using conventional weapons that would culminate in a nuclear holocaust by the year 1999. Between 1999 and 2003, most of the life on the planet would suffer horribly and would die as a result. The return of Christ would occur in the year 2011. Of course, we're in 2021, and that did not happen. When the aliens were confronted with this finding, they confirmed that it was true. The aliens explained that they had created us through hybridization and had manipulated the human race through religion, Satanism, witchcraft, magic, and the occult. They further explained that they were capable of time traveling and the events would indeed come to pass. Later exploitation of the alien technology by the United States and the Soviet Union utilizing time travel confirmed the prophecy. The aliens showed a hologram which they claimed was the actual crucifixion of Christ, which the government filmed. We did not know whether to believe them or not. Were they using genuine religions to manipulate us, or were they indeed the source of our religions in which they had been manipulating us all along? Or was this the beginning of the genuine end times, the return of Christ, which had been predicted in the Bible? No one knew the answer. A synopsis in was held in 1957 and was attended by some of the greatest scientific minds then living. They reached the conclusion that by shortly after the year 2000, the planet would self-destruct due to increased population and man's exploitation of the environment without any help from the gods or the aliens. Alternatives 1, 2, and 3. By secret executive order, our President Eisenhower, order of President Eisenhower, the Jason scholars were ordered to study the scenario and make recommendations called Alternatives 1, 2, and 3. Alternative 1 was to use nuclear devices to blast holes in the stratosphere from which heat and pollution would escape into space. Change the human culture from the exploitation of cultures of environmental protection. Of the three was decided to be the most likely to succeed due to the inherent nature of man and the additional damage the nuclear explosions would themselves create. Alternative 2 was to build a vast network of underground cities and tunnels in which a select representation of all cultures and occupations would survive and carry on the human race. The rest of humanity would be left to fend for themselves on the surface of the planet. Alternative 3 was to exploit the alien and conventional technology in order for a select few to leave the Earth and establish colonies in outer space. I am not able to confirm nor deny the existence of batch consignments of human slaves that would have been used for the manual labor in the effort as part of the plan. The moon, codename Adam, would be the object of primary interest, followed by the planet Mars, codename Eve. As a delaying action, all three alternatives included birth control, sterilization, and the introduction of deadly microbes to control or slow the growth of Earth's population. That sounds familiar, being with COVID-19. AIDS is only one result of these plans. There are others. It was decided, since the population must be reduced and controlled, that it would be in the best interest of the human race to rid ourselves of the undesirable elements of our society. The joint U.S. and Soviet leadership dismissed Alternative 1, but ordered work to begin on Alternative 2 and Alternative 3 virtually at the same time. In 1959, the RAND Corporation, hosted by a deep underground construction synopsis, the symposium report, the machines are pictured and described, which could bore a 45-foot in diameter tunnel at a rate of 5 feet per hour. It also displayed pictures of huge tunnels in underground vaults containing what appeared to be a complex facility and possibly even cities. It appeared that the previous 5 years of all underground construction had made significant progress by that time. The ruling powers decided that one means of funding the alien connected and other black market projects was to corner the illegal drug market. A young, ambitious member of the City on Foreign Relations was approached. His name was, or is, George Bush, who at the time was the president and CEO of Zapata Oil, based in Texas. Zapata Oil was experimenting with new technology of offshore drilling. It was correctly thought that the drugs could be shipped from South America to the offshore platforms by fishing boat, where it would then be taken by the normal transportation used for supplies and personnel. By this method, no customs or law enforcement agency would subject the cargo to search. George Bush agreed to help with the organization of the operation in conjunction with the CIA. The plan worked better than anyone had thought and since expanded worldwide, and now there are many other methods of bringing the illegal drugs into the country. It must also be remembered that George Bush began sale of drugs to our children. The CIA now controls all of the world's illegal drug markets. The real space program. The official space program was boosted by President Kennedy in his inaugural address, in which he mandated that the United States put a man on the moon before the end of the decade. Although innocent in its conception, this mandate enabled those in charge to funnel vast amounts of money into the black projects and conceal the real space program from the American people. A similar program in the Soviet Union served the same purpose. In fact, a joint alien United States-Soviet Union based base already existed on the moon at the very moment Kennedy spoke on these words. On May 22nd, 1962, a space probe landed on Mars and confirmed the existence of an environment which could support life. Not long after the construction of a colony on the planet, Mars began in earnest. Today, cities exist on Mars, populated by specifically selected people from different cultures and occupations taken from all over the earth. A public charade of antagonism between the United States and the Soviet Union has been maintained over the years in order to fund projects in the name of the national defense, which, in fact, we are the closest allies. The Kennedy assassination. Now, this is interesting, and this is where the part two of my podcast is going to come into play. At some point, President Kennedy discovered portions of the truth concerning the drugs and the aliens. He issued an ultimatum in 1963 to MJ-12. President Kennedy assured them that if they didn't clean up the drug problem, he would. He informed MJ-12 that he intended to reveal the presence of aliens to the American people within the following year in order to plan to develop and implement his decision. President Kennedy was not a member of the Council on Foreign Relations and knew nothing of Alternative 2 or Alternative 3. Internationally, the operations were supervised by MJ-12 and in the Soviet Union by its sister organization. President Kennedy's decision struck fear in the hearts of those in charge. His assassination was ordered by the Policy Committee, and the order was carried out by agents of MJ-12 in Dallas. President John F. Kennedy was murdered by Secret Service agents who drove his car in the motorcade, and the act is plainly visible in film. Watch the driver and not Kennedy when you view the film. All of the witnesses who were close enough to the car to see William Greer shoot Kennedy were themselves all murdered within the next 2 years of the event. The Warren Commission was a farce, and Council on Presidential Relations members made up the majority of the panel. They succeeded in showing the American people, many other not patriots who attempted to reveal the alien secret, had been murdered throughout the intervening years. During the era of the United States, initial space exploration and the moon landings, every launch was accompanied by alien craft. A moon base named Luna was sighted and filmed by the Apollo astronauts. Domes, spires, tall round structures which looked like silos, huge T-shaped mining vehicles which left stitch-like tracks in the lunar surface, and extremely large as well as small alien crafts appeared in the photographs. It is a joint United States-Russian and alien base. The space program is a farce and an unbelievable waste of money. Alternative 3 is a reality and not at all science fiction. Most of the Apollo astronauts were severely shaken by this experience, and their lives and subsequent statements reflect the depth of the revelation and the effect of the muzzle order which followed. They were ordered to remain silent or suffer extreme penalty, death, which termed as expediency. One astronaut actually did talk to British producers of the TV expose Alternative 3, confirming many of the allegations. In the book Alternative 3, the pseudonym Bob Groden was used in place of the astronaut's identity. It was also stated that he committed suicide in 1978. This cannot be validated by any source, and I believe the several so-called facts in the book are disinformation. I firmly believe that the disinformation is a result of pressure put upon authors and is meant to nullify the effects upon the populace of the British TV expose entitled Alternative 3. The headquarters of the international conspiracy is in Geneva, Switzerland. The ruling body is made up of representatives of the government, of the populace of the British TV expose Alternative 3. So the ruling body is made up of representatives of the government, hold on one second, involved as well as the executive members of the group known as Bilderbergers that we had talked about earlier. Meetings, sorry, my screen just went dark. Hold on, here we go. All right, so meetings are held by the Policy Committee when necessary on a nuclear submarine beneath a polar ice cap. The secrecy is such that it was the only method in which that would ensure the meetings would not be bugged. I can say that the book is at least 70% true, and from my own knowledge and the knowledge of my sources, I believe that the disinformation was an attempt to compromise the British TV expose with information that could be proven false, just as Eisenhower briefing document was released here in the US under the contingency plan Majestic 12, which can also be proven false. All right, alien spacecraft. Since our interaction with the aliens, we have come into possession of technology beyond our wildest dreams. A craft named Aurora exists at Area 51, which makes regular trips into space. It is a one-stage ship called a TAV, a trans-atmospheric vehicle, which can take off from the ground using a 7-mile runway, go into high orbit, and return on its own power and land on the same runway. We currently have and fly atomic-powered alien-type craft at Area S4 in Nevada. Our pilots have made interplanetary voyages in these crafts and have been to the moon, Mars, and other planets aboard these crafts. We have been lied to about the true nature of the moon. The planets, Mars and Venus, are the real state of technology that we possess at this very moment. There are areas on the moon where plant life grows and even changes colors with the season. The seasonal effect is because the moon does not, as claimed, always present the exact same side to the earth or the sun. There is an area that wobbles in and out of darkness on the seasonal basis, and it is near the area that the plant life grows. The moon does have a few man-made lakes and ponds upon its surface, and clouds have been observed and filmed in its atmosphere. It possesses a gravitational field, and man can walk on its surface without a spacesuit, breathing from an oxygen bottle while undergoing decompression, the same as any deep-sea diver. I have seen photographs, and some of them were actually published in the book, We Discovered Alien Bases on the Moon by Fred Steckling. In 1969, a confrontation broke out between the human scientists and the aliens at the Dulce Underground Lab. The aliens took many of our scientists hostage. Delta forces were sent to free them, but were no match against the alien weapons. 66 of our people were killed during this action. As a result, we withdrew from all joint projects for at least 2 years. A reconciliation eventually took place, and once again, we began to interact. Today, the alliance continues. Nixon being forced to resign. When the Watergate scandal broke, President Nixon had intended to ride out the storm, confident he would not be impeached. MJ-12, however, had a different agenda. The intelligence community rightfully concluded that an impeachment trial would open up the files and bare the awful secrets to the public eye. Nixon was ordered to resign. He refused, so the first military coup ever to take place in the United States began. The Joint Chief of Staffs sent a top-secret message to the commanders of all U.S. armed forces throughout the world. It stated, upon receipt of this message, you will no longer carry out any orders from the White House. Acknowledge receipt. The message was sent a full 5 days before Nixon conceded and announced publicly that he would resign. I personally saw the message. When I asked my commanding officer what he would do, as obviously the order violated the Constitution, I was told, I guess we'll wait to see if any orders come from the White House, and then I will decide. I did not see any communication from the White House, but that does not mean that none were sent. During the years that this had been happening, the Congress and the American people have seemed to know instinctively that something was not right. When the Watergate scandal surfaced, they jumped on the bandwagon, and everyone thought that the agencies had been cleaned out. President Ford organized the Rockefeller Commission to do this job. At least that is what everyone thought. His real purpose was to head off Congress and keep the cover-up going. Nelson Rockefeller, who headed the commission investigating the intelligence community, was a member of the Council on Foreign Relations and was the one who helped Eisenhower build the MJ-12 power structure. Rockefeller uncovered only enough to keep the hounds at bay. He threw the Congress a few bones, and the cover-up rolled merrily along its ways. Later, Senator Church would conduct the famous Church hearings. He was also a prominent member of the Council on Foreign Relations, and he only repeated the Rockefeller Act. Again, the cover-up prevailed. When the Iran-Contra came along, we thought at this time it had to become gushing out. Wrong again. Despite mountains of documents that pointed to drug smuggling and other hidden monsters the cover-up sailed through, Congress even seemed to go out of its way to duck the issues and were just under the surface. Could it be that Congress knows the whole thing and won't touch it? Are they amongst the select who have been picked for the Mars colony when the Earth began to destruct? I cannot even begin to outline the entire financial empire controlled by the CIA, the NSA, the Council on Foreign Relations that controls the laundered money from the drugs and intelligence community, proprietary ventures. But I can tell you that the little I do know, the amount of money is beyond anything you can imagine and is hidden in a vast network of banks, holding companies, etc. You should first begin to look at the J. Henry Schroeder Banking Corporation, the Schroeder Trust Company, Schroeder Limited out of London, and Helbert Wag Holdings Ltd. That's WAGG. J. Henry Schroeder and Wag Company Ltd. Schroeder Gerbruder and Company out of Germany. Schroeder Munchelmeyer and Hanks Company, Castle Bank, and other holding companies. The Asian Development Bank and the Nugent Hand Octopus of banks and holding companies. There was a contingency plan. A contingency plan was formulated by MJ12 to throw off the trail should anyone come close to the truth. The plan was known as Majestic 12. It was implemented and released by Moore, Shandera, and Friedman of the purported genuine Eisenhower briefing documents. The document is a fraud. The document lists the executive order as number 092447. The number which does not exist and will not exist for quite a long time at the present rate. Truman wrote executive orders in the 9,000 range. Eisenhower wrote in the 10,000 range. Ford was up to 11,000, up to the 11,000 bracket, and Reagan only got into the 12,000 numbers. Executive orders are numbered consistently. No matter who occupies the White House for reasons of continuity, the records keeping and they're kept to prevent confusion. The executive order is only one of the several fatal flaws contained within this document. The plan so far was thrown to the entire research community off the trail for several years and has resulted in the wasting expenditure of money looking for information which does not exist. It resulted in a total waste of a grant by the Fund of UFO Research of $16,000, which was given to the Stanton Friedman to research this information. Many thousands of man hours have gone into looking for the red herring. If you doubt the secret government's ability to run through the Rose Garden, you better think again. Another contingency plan is in force and is working upon you today is the plan to prepare the public for eventual confrontation with an alien race. The public is being bombarded with movies, radio, advertising, and TV depicting almost every aspect of the true nature of alien presence. And this includes the good and the bad. Look around and pay attention. The aliens are planning to make their presence known, and the government is preparing you for it, so there will be no panic. The worst contingency plan has been implemented and is at work right now. For many years now, they have been importing drugs and selling them to the people, and mainly the poor and minorities. Social welfare programs were put into place to create a dependent, non-working element of our society. They began to remove social welfare programs in order to develop a large criminal class that did not exist in the 50s and 60s. They encouraged the manufacture of importation of deadly military firearms for the criminal element to use. This was intended to foster a feeling of insecurity that would lead the American people to voluntarily disarm themselves by passing laws against firearms. Incidents were to be staged to speed up the process by using drugs and hypnosis in a process called Orion on mental patients. The CIA inoculated the desire in these people to open fire in schoolyards and inflame anti-gun lobby. The plan is well underway and so far is working as planned. The plan must not succeed. Martial law and concentration camps. This is all part of the plan. And this is really just chilling to read all of this. President Truman created hold on one sec. My screen just skipped. Hold on one sec. Let me find it. What happened to concentration camps? Bear with me. Talents gathering. I just lost it. My screen moved. So anyway, as I'm looking for these, I mean, it's kind of crazy to think of all of these things happening. I mean, it's just crazy to think that the government would partner with a group like this, with the aliens, and trade everything for technology at the expense of the American population. But I guess if you really think about it, what choice do we have? I mean, if their technology is this advanced and our weapons cannot do anything to stop them, I mean, you can see why I guess we would do this. So, okay, I found my place again. So let me get back to this. All right, here we go. The beauty of live radio. So, martial law in concentration camps. Due to the wave of crime sweeping the nation, they will convince the American people that a state of anarchy exists within the major cities. They are now building their case almost nightly on TV and daily in the newspapers. When public opinion has been won over on this idea, they intend to state that a terrorist group armed with a nuclear weapon has entered the United States and they plan to detonate this device in one of our cities. The government will then suspend the Constitution and declare martial law. The secret alien army of implanted humans and all dissidents, which were in place in these concentration camps, destined to make the report batch consignments of slave labor needed for space colonies. So these people will be brought in and turned into space laborers, basically slave laborers for space colonists. The media, radio, TV, newspapers, and computer networks will be nationalized and seized. Anyone who resists will be taken or killed. The entire operation was rehearsed by the government and military in 1984 under the code name Rex 84, and it went off without a hitch. When these events were transpired, the secret government and or alien takeover will be complete. Your freedom will never be returned, and you will live in slavery for the remainder of your life. You need to wake up and do something about it now, it says. So, secret government agents. Phil Klass is an agent for the CIA, and this was stated in the documents I saw between 1970 and 1973. One of his jobs as an aviation expert was to debunk everything to do with UFOs. All military commanders were instructed to call him and gain information on how to debunk and or explain the UFO contacts and the sightings to the public and or to the press if the need arose. William Moore, Jamie Shandera, Stanton Freeman, and either witting or unwitting, you began to use this knowledge. Several were secret agents of the secret government. I believe that they are unwitting, although Moore's reported us of a defense investigation service ID, and he reported self-confession to Leo Graham that he was an agent of the government, makes me seriously doubt it. If the reports are true, Lee Graham called me at home, and when asked, he confirmed that Moore had indeed done this. Stanton Freeman had told me and many others that years ago he helped to develop a nuclear reactor to power the aircraft that was the size of a basketball, was clean, turned out hydrogen, and worked like a dream. His words, not mine. The only fuel which I could go into such an engine and produce hydrogen is a byproduct is water. The only place in the universe at that time to get such technology was from the aliens. Is he really unwitting? I do not know. He was a member of the Moore, Shandera, and Freeman research team, and they were implemented the Majestic 12 contingency plan. So the Majestic 12 today, does it exist? We will find out. Today, MJ12 still exists in operation and operates as it always has. So it hasn't changed. This is made up from the same structure, 6 from the same positions in government, and 6 from executive members of the Council of Foreign Relations and Trilateral Commission. The majority agency for joint intelligence is publicly known as the Senior Group. In closing, it is most important to understand that the Council on Foreign Relations and the offshoot of the Trilateral Commission not only control but own this country. Long before World War II, they were instrumental in helping to decide policy for the United States government. The Council on Foreign Relations, Trilateral Commission, and the foreign counterparts report to the Bilderbergers. Almost every high-level government and military official of any consequence since World War II, including presidents, have been members of the Council on Foreign Relations and Trilateral Committees. All American members of the Trilateral Commission have either been or have been a member of the Council on Foreign Relations. Each foreign national or any important of its own offshoot on the Council of Foreign Relations were the members of each country interact with each other through countries, through the Bilderbergers to further their common goals. The foreign member of the Trilateral Commission belong to the respective organizations. Even a cursory investigation by the most experienced researcher will show that members of the Council on Foreign Relations and the Trilateral Commission control the major foundations, all of the major media, publishing interests, largest banks, major corporations, upper echelons of government, and many other vital interests. Their members are elected and appointed because they have all of the money and special interests behind them, and that is, except the people's. They are under democratic and do not in any way represent the majority of the U.S. America. These are people who will decide who survives the coming Holocaust and who does not. The Bilderbergers, the Council on Foreign Relations, and the Trilateral Commission are the secret government and rule this nation through MJ12 and the study group known as the Jason Society or the Jason Scholars. So there you have it. That is the long story of Majestic 12. Now, I know that was long. It was a long read. Hopefully you bear with it. And it was important for me to read to you how big of an organization the Majestic 12 has been through society. And it was important for you to understand that this group, many report, is pulling all of the strings behind the scenes. Now, in the next show, because I couldn't do them both together, is going to be a shorter show, but it's going to talk about the involvement of Dwight Eisenhower, President Nixon, JFK, Marilyn Monroe, and many others, the fake moon landing, and all things that were tied into this entire story of the Majestic 12. So I hope that you enjoyed this show. I know it was a little bit arduous at times, and there was a lot of reading involved, but you needed to know the history of the Majestic 12 before we go into the other show where we talk about Eisenhower, Nixon, JFK Jr., Marilyn Monroe, the moon landing, etc. So listen to this one first if you can, then move on to the second. And I'm going to record this hopefully today, the second one, and hopefully publish them both at the same time. So I hope all of you enjoyed this show today. And again, it's scary stuff, and let's hope it's not true. But if it is, it's pretty terrifying to think that this is what's actually going on in our world. So anyway, take care, have a wonderful day, and thank you for joining the John DeVito Show.